Okay, next on the agenda is item 8, P20 Competencies Pilot, Sarah Young, Director of Strategic Initiatives. Oh, excuse me, Board Member Earl. Sorry, Sarah, hold on just one second. Board Member Earl, did you have a question or comment?
I actually had a couple questions just because we've got superintendent here. I just have some questions specifically about the groups that are together working on COVID type of things. And are you still attending these meetings? Is that accurate?
Are you talking about the COVID-19 task force?
Well, the workforce, the groups that you're meeting with, physicians and other groups.
So I do meet every if I may, Madam Chair. I do meet on Tuesdays. All of these are virtual, of course, but we meet on Tuesdays as a school medical advisory group. And that is comprised of infectious disease pediatricians, epidemiologists. Dr. Dunn is on the call. State Department of Health, Rich Saunders, Joe Miner is there. We have Betty Sue Hinkson from our office who represents nurses, members of our PR team, local health is at the table, Tammy Pfeiffer from the governor's office. I'm trying to think who else is involved. And we just have an hour and we generally discuss a specific topic.
Okay, so can I ask just a couple questions, or at least questions that maybe you can ask them?
Sure.
If that's okay. Just a couple of things is the CDC is updating their numbers and their ways of going about doing things. How quickly, could you just ask how quickly Utah will follow in that same lead? And specifically, for example, the CDC is no longer counting the number of people in the household when someone is tested positive. Just asking how we count our numbers. That's one. And then I can actually send these on to you too. And then the one, the numbers that are dying from COVID versus those that are passing away that have COVID. I know that the CDC has updated their numbers on that. So I'm wondering if Utah is following suit on that or what they're doing.
And if I
go
may,
ahead.
Board Member Earl, so we just discussed very specific school-related issues. I am happy to get those answers for you, but I'm not in groups where those kinds of things are discussed.
Okay. Well, then this one is specifically for schools. I understood those as being broader based on the individuals that are there, similar individuals that are in these other groups. Sorry, let me. So Dr. Angela Dunn spoke about a group that she was putting together, or someone was putting together, this is during the legislative special session, to talk about how to go about testing children in schools. Can you tell us who's on that group and what the questions are, or what's going on with that, or if that's even moving? Because anyways, if you have any knowledge about that.
Yeah, we actually discussed testing in the last meeting because you might be aware that President Trump at the Republican National Convention mentioned testing, and he included schools in that, and there are tests being sent forward to states. I was on a call with our state school officers, all of the chiefs, the superintendents from around the country, and we have more questions than answers. While it's been said that it will be sent out to schools, we are recommending that would come through the regular testing protocol so that there are testing protocols in place. And in our case, we have a unified command structure that all of those things come through. So Nate Chucketts, he works on all of the testing. He kind of heads that up from the unified command structure. So when it comes to schools, I would probably be asking some of the similar questions, things about privacy and permission and involvement of the family and, all of those kinds of things.
Sure, and those were my questions where I hadn't heard of that before, and we'd had discussions previously about the concerns with that. So I was wondering where that was based on the fact I heard it in the legislative session.
Yeah, right now we're asking the more questions than we have answers for. There's also a study that will be working with schools, and they've got all of the protocols in place that would be typical research protocols, and it is out of the University of Utah. So they're already working with some districts to look at testing, and then doing research around that. But again, they've followed all of the research protocols with permissions and privacy and all of that.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious on those.
And
Thank
if
you.
you want to put anything in writing, then I can follow up.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, thanks.
Thank you. We'll move now to Sarah Young and the P20 Competencies Pilot.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to present the Utah P20 competencies for your consideration for pilot for this current 2020-2021 school year. Our plan for today's presentation is to be able to address the competencies in regards to our current state, do an overview of the P20 competencies development process and updates on steps that have occurred since we were last with you in June, seek an action to approve the P20 competencies pilot for the 2021 school year, and then provide an overview of next steps, including local rubric design and the presentation of the PCBL framework for as an information item. So in terms of where we are, as we move into the 2020-2021 school year, we've entered phase 3 of our COVID-19 recovery plan. We're returning and we're reimagining. This next step is critical for our students as we use lessons learned from the spring to create new learning opportunities for this school year that are safe and meaningful. And when it comes to reimagining education, Utah has laid the foundation for innovation. Utah's Portrait of a Graduate identifies the ideal characteristics of a Utah graduate after going through the K-12 system. These characteristics prepare our students to succeed and lead in alignment with USBE's vision and the broader vision of our community. Utah's Portrait of a Graduate articulates our goals, which really serve as our North Star, guiding us during this time of reimagining and personalizing education for students. And these competencies are essential to call out and define as we seek to create new learning environments for our students. We know it'll look different. The safety measures of COVID-19 have pushed us to find new solutions. Let's take, for example, the competency of collaboration and teamwork. Teamwork and collaboration in schools traditionally looks like this. A crowded table with students gathered around, all contributing to their ideas and their vision for creating a final product together. However, we know that in light of the situational characteristics that we've encouraged our schools to consider in terms of COVID-19, the collaboration and teamwork will look a little bit different. It does not change that collaboration and teamwork will happen in Utah K-12 schools. It just may look a little different than the previous version of everybody huddled around a table. So for example, it may look something like this first image, which are our P20 competencies developers engaging in collaboration and teamwork to develop this document in a virtual platform that you're actually considering today. It may look like collaboration and teamwork at home with parents and siblings. It may be a discussion board, a turn and talk, and other innovations that our teachers are piloting. We know that collaboration and teamwork are necessary skills to prepare our students to be successful in their future endeavors, and that this is just one of 13 competencies in Utah's Portrait of a Graduate. It is vital that we support our schools and teachers to be intentional about these and other competencies in Utah's Portrait of a Graduate as they begin to reimagine and change the face of education. So as a reminder from our presentation in June, here is our call to action. For all Utah students to succeed and lead, clear competencies across pre-K to higher education, or P20, must be prioritized and available to Utah educators and students. Here, I'm going to take a step forward to provide a quick overview of the process that has led us to this final product. So in terms of the process, we recruited a diverse set of developers from across the state of Utah, including teachers, administrators, higher education, industry, parents, special education leaders, and more. They gave hours of their time and expertise while balancing all of their other roles and commitments during COVID-19. Additionally, we partnered with KnowledgeWorks, an organization with 20 years of experience as a leader in strategic foresight and education transformation. KnowledgeWorks' passionate team partnered with USBE, our educators, and our education stakeholders to facilitate the development of our state draft competencies. The original plan was for in-person workshops, but we quickly shifted in light of COVID-19 to Zoom, Google Drive, and an online project collaboration platform to develop the set of competencies we present to you here today. We extended the development period to be mindful of digital fatigue and provide groups additional time for discussion and development. The developers were broken into competency teams of 8 to 12 developers. Each team included a leader from the agency and a facilitator from KnowledgeWorks. As a quick reminder of the overall process, we engaged in quite a bit of digital reflection as well as sharing of iterations of drafts over the process of the 3-week development. Starting with introductions for a collective expertise, understanding where everyone's backgrounds and expertise were originating from, exploring the digital tools and introduction of Utah's Portrait of a Graduate so we could all work from that same foundation of the goal set of North Star of POG for our kids, being able to then consider rigor and research to, again, just build that foundational understanding of what does success look like in Utah schools and how do we leverage that research base to help inform the development of these competencies. We did a design round of the 912 competencies that you see presented to you today. Those were shared with the other groups to receive feedback from the comprehensive set of 120 stakeholders. We then took that feedback, made iterations, and then developed the full set of grade-banded competencies. We then shared those again internally with the developer groups to get additional feedback about how those were vertically aligned in the comprehensive scope and sequence. And then we incorporated all of that feedback into the draft that we then shared with the broader community for public comment. Between June 9th and July 9th of 2020, we had a 30-day public comment period where we received feedback from the greater community. In terms of sharing, recognizing that we were in this digital space, we really worked collectively across the agency as well as with our other state partners to help get out the word about the draft and getting feedback from different groups. I've presented some of those groups here for you here today, and you can see that everyone from our existing P20 developers sharing within their networks, reaching out to our partners with the Governor's Office, Department of Workforce Services, USHE, UTEC, and the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and then sharing more broadly with many of our educational stakeholder groups, definitely including our Student Advisory Council, asking them to help reach out to students in K-12 to be able to give feedback, as well as some of our educational stakeholder groups that are specific by content area, as well as expertise and roles in K-12 education. And so we bring before you here today the Utah Portrait of a Graduate set of competencies, which is present within your backup for your consideration. As a reminder, these P20 competencies set high expectations for all of our students, have an alignment from pre-K to higher education, building a scope and sequence for what these competencies look like at each individual grade band to reach those successful outcomes that we see for all of our students. And finally, providing students personalized learning opportunities to demonstrate those competencies, framing each of our competencies through the vision of what students will be able to demonstrate to be able to really focus on that outcome component that is so key as we move into personalized and competency-based learning opportunities for our students. So I've highlighted the collaboration and teamwork as something that looks different as we reimagine education. And so I've highlighted that as an exemplar in this presentation for you, just showing, how we've broken down the competency into different student outcome statements and built that progression across each of the grade bands to create a cohesive outcome associated with how our students will be able to contribute ideas, perspectives, and experiences to cultivate a community of shared accountability and leadership. This is our moment to be able to take the next step and translate this from a vision of Portrait of a Graduate to a reality of outcomes that we expect to see for our students and provide our teachers the resources and supports to be able to make that a reality. So this is where I bring forward to you a request for action that the board approve the Utah P20 competencies for pilot implementation for this 2020-21 school year. It is a pilot because we are seeking feedback from the greater field to then be able to inform a final revision of these competencies in the summer of 2021 for final approval by the board at that time. So I'll pause in case there are any questions or comments related to this requested action.
Oh, Board Member Earl?
Yeah, so I got to attend a couple of these meetings and listen. I just have a question on the equity definition because, I don't know if this has gone before the group that was putting this together, but I know that there were teachers that were asking about moving, instead of resources being the primary reason behind equity, using some of the dialogue from law, and I can just give you some examples. I don't remember their actual definition, so it may have to go back to the last meeting that they were at. Specifically, something like all children can learn, capacity to learn, think, reason, work effectively with individuals and groups. It's just from 53E to 302. There's a number of items there that create equality for all children in Utah. I just wondered if they're still working on that or if this is what they settled on. And if so, it's just my comment that we should look at that definition a little closer. So I'm done. So, I don't know if she can.
Sorry. So thank you, Board Member Earl. So I am not quite familiar with the conversation around the definition of equity, and I would just pause to see if any of our leaders wanted to reference that, mainly in relationship to this document. I know those conversations have definitely been happening at the agency and continue to grow and evolve, but I would defer to our leadership, superintendency members, to speak to that specific element.
Is there anyone who would like to speak to that element?
This is Deputy Superintendent Norman.
Thank you.
There's a lot of work being done on equity and the definition of equity, and so I know that that's going to influence the definition that is here as well. And so that is work that is being done, and so this might be changed according to some of the work that is being done, if that is your question.
Board Member Earl?
Yeah, question, but maybe even the request that we actually use what the legislature's put in place through Utah law for our education system to help in defining that. So that's just my request.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Earl. And we will put that on there.
Thank you. Board Member Marsh?
May I make a motion, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I make a motion that we approve the Utah P20 competencies for a pilot implementation for the 2020-2021 school year.
Is there a second? Okay, the motion before us is that the board approve the Utah P20 competencies for pilot implementation for the 2020-21 school year. Is there discussion to that motion? Board Member Belknap?
I apologize if I missed this, but is there a school district and or a school who is wanting to take this on?
Sarah?
Thank you, Board Member Belknap. So, pardon me, Chair, if I may.
Yes, please, sorry.
So in regards to the work around competencies, this is something where each of our awardees in the competency grant education program have had representatives contributing to the development of this particular document. So we believe that those specific LEAs are ready to run with this vision and bring it into their communities and their classrooms, supported at the local level.
Thank you, and may already have started to use them. So, okay,
That
thanks.
is correct. Thank you.
Board Member Earl?
Yeah, just my other comment, and I'm just looking on the diagram here. I'm just wondering, I see that on 4C, we recognize parents as taking a role in the education of their children, but we do that through increasing access to qualified personnel. I'm just wondering if there's somewhere else on here that we would, I'm looking at the visual, that parents would be included on that as well. And if not, I think we should look at making sure that that's a key component, because that is, with our educators and our students, that is primary success comes through working with our parents as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Earl. So it's just a point of clarification, and I think that's, pardon me, where my confusion was coming from. So the particular document that we are asking for board action on is going to be the one that has this particular cover with the Utah Portrait of a Graduate Competencies. Dr. Thronson will be speaking to the PCBL framework momentarily, but that is a separate document that supports the vision of personalized competency-based learning, but is not the specific action item. So I apologize for my confusion in that earlier feedback.
Sarah, which item in the backup then is the one we're asking for approval today? What's it titled? Is it final?
Utah Competencies VO2, and it has a cover that looks like this.
Thank you.
And that's going to have each of the competencies listed out with each of the grade bands associated with that.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, Board Member Earl?
Yeah, so we can just move my comments to whoever's speaking next. I'm sorry, I just went right down where we were, so I do apologize. I was going down our agenda here,
Okay,
so
thank you.
sorry about the confusion. No wonder you were thinking, what is she talking about? So, okay.
Thank you. Board
Thanks.
Member Belknap? Hand down. Okay, then seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is that the board approve the Utah P20 competencies for pilot implementation for the 2020-21 school year. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Board Member Belknap?
Aye.
Board Member Bolter?
Aye.
Chair Huntsman?
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, Board Member Earl?
Just have one more question. Where this is a pilot program, does that, I'm guessing that still lends itself if there's need for changing or any of that kind of a thing, that, am I saying that, or is that accurate? It'll come before the board again when we, okay, thanks.
It'll come before the board in summer of 2021 once we receive feedback from this first round of early pilot implementation. You're correct.
Thank you, Sarah. Now we have a presentation of next steps with Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Thank you, Board Chair. Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning, as you said. And to really show the alignment of where this P20 work aligns with a larger frame of work is our personalized competency-based learning framework. We're just launching today with you as the board for awareness, and we'll be expressing this launch and release to the field following today's meeting. And so just going to take you through the key components of it, build your awareness and familiarity with the document, and I'll address Board Member Earl's questions related to the equity definition and our next steps for kind of embedding families and home communities into this document more strategically. So if you'll, thank you, slide director, Sarah Young. So in your board backup, you have our PCBL framework. This is a newly developed document that's really intended to start showing the convergence of initiatives in our agency. So in the visual representation, you have the USBE strategic plan, specifically goal 4, which really gets at personalized teaching and learning and expanding upon our connections with competency-based approaches to learning. And so you've got how the P20s you see there in the center with our P20 competencies and our core standards. That is the knowledge and skills and dispositions we want our students to have as they go through the pre-K-12 system. And then beyond that, you have the talent map and portrait of a graduate. And all of those are embedded within the personalized competency-based learning framework and how we achieve those initiatives. And so within the personalized competency-based framework, we have 6 main initiatives. And if you'll take us to the next one, these are the essential components. So from purpose and vision, student agency, demonstrated competency and assessment, customized supports, equity, and social emotional learning. These are the essential components to transforming Utah's education system and really personalizing and using a competency-based approach to learning so that our students are maximizing the learning that they acquire each year through our system and allowing our teachers to really have the skills and knowledge to be able to differentiate, to personalize, and really look at achieving competency with students in demonstrated ways. So with that said, just tying into board member Earl's question around equity, we chose to leverage the board's definition for equity, which is what's represented in the framework. If that definition changes, we would obviously want to update that to align with the board's vision. This is currently what's in documents from the board of their agreed upon definition for equity, but the intent of that was to make sure that we weren't creating a new definition, but leveraging what has already been identified by the board. If that were to change in the future, we'd be happy to update the document, as the intention is really to show convergence around the initiatives we have at the agency and how the strategic plan is driving the PCBL initiative, along with the supports of the P20 competencies and portrait of a graduate, and how those converge to create this transformative educational system. So with that said, the next couple of pages demonstrate supports for the field. So it's one thing, the first thing the PCBL framework did, and I want to thank the colleagues at the agency, Sid Young, Todd Call, Sarah Whipke, Nathan Ock, and Christy Schreck, who have really put in lots of time and effort in the development of this tool. We had lots of stakeholder feedback. That is a part that board member Earl also participated in to help us refine and get this right. This is what we consider version 1.0. We'll talk about what version 2.0 could integrate into the future. But the field is super excited about what is here because it starts to clearly articulate what do we mean by personalized competence-based learning? What does that look like in practice? And that's what these pages, as you look in the document, represent. What are the teacher indicators? What are the student indicators and behaviors? Along with what are the promising practices? What does this actually look like in classrooms, in schools, in districts? What are the systems pieces? What are the day-to-day teaching experiences? What does it look like? Trying to give concrete examples of this work in practice in the classroom. And so that's what these pages are really meant to articulate, to help getting our LEAs to see what this could mean for them, where they can begin to develop, where they can advance their current practice to really get towards this aim of personalizing through a competency-based learning approach. So that is kind of what's currently in the version 1.0 is what we're calling it. Version 2.0 could have that equity update definition. We did partner with our social emotional learning team, so the definition here is their definition. We really did try and converge across the agency to not reinvent the wheel, but to use the already standardized approaches to kind of weave together and create more clarity and coherence in this document. So in the future version, if you want to go to the next step, Sarah, I think it's Sarah driving. Thank you. Is to really release this framework to the field. We'll start with just basic awareness that it's available and out there. And then our goal is to develop some professional learning for LEAs who really want to start down this road or advance their current work down this road over the course of the next year. We'll also be looking to add what we have right now as teacher and student indicators, but adding a home and families indicator, knowing that learning doesn't just happen in the classroom or in the school setting, but that our students can also be impacted in their learning through the home and family experiences that they have. So we'll be taking kind of the same approach to what are the home and family indicators, what are the promising practices of how to personalize and competency-based learning approach in ways that parents and other kind of caregivers for our children might be able to contribute to this vision. We'll additionally have an initiative alignment of where we take these components and ask staff for what resources do we already have at the state that our LEAs could be leveraging to move forward in this work. We've created lots of different tools across our agency, and having a one-stop shop of here's this toolkit, here's this guidance document that have already been created that might help to advance the work in our LEAs so that they can leverage the tools that are already out there rather than having to try and develop everything themselves. So that will be likely in version 2.0, as well as kind of just what we get from, it's releasing this to the field, the feedback we will receive, and being able to make adjustments to really help in building a clear, consistent vision of this work moving forward. So with that said, I think I hit all of the next steps. Questions for the group? Really, this is just the opportunity for you to know about this document and the future work that will be coming.
Board Member Earl?
Yeah, I guess my question is, so I feel like that definition feels a little bit like stuff, like equal stuff for everyone kind of a thing, instead of the idea that the individual is capable of doing, all individuals are capable of doing things. So if we could, I think our definition that we have, that we're using is appropriate for a portion, but I would hope we would just kind of look at that thoroughly and see if there's some other things that could also be beneficial that are about the individual being able to be successful, right? So, and that's what this is, right? Personal learning. So, thank you.
Yeah. Board Member Belknap?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things. Jennifer, Dr. Thronson, how are you working on doing the difference between competency and personalizing? And maybe that's not a discussion for this meeting, but I will come to you and ask that. But I also have real concerns that we continue to buy programs and or have so many programs in our office that every school thinks they need everything. And that's where my example of scribbling would be, is that if we'll purchase it, everybody needs it. But if we give them the money, they're going to be much more apt to purchase what they need in their school rather than us deciding what they need. So will you just answer the question on personalizing and competency?
Sure. So within kind of those two big ideals of this framework, personalization is thinking about the students' needs, how they learn, what strategies, what resources, what supports they might need. So I might have to customize the support I give to an English learner differently than I might need to customize it for a non-English learner. And so the intention there is that personalization, that our learners have different needs, and learning what those needs are both at the teacher level, but the student also having awareness of what their needs are and how they learn best, and being able to take those two perspectives and blend them together to create learning conditions that maximize student learning. Where competency is the opportunity to demonstrate their understanding, the learning that they've acquired, to really show evidence that they have mastered the content, the P20 competencies, the core standards through this work. And to do that, it's going to take personalization. So through the personalizing of the instruction, they're going to have higher levels of competence that will then be demonstrated through portfolios, kind of presentations and other work samples or experiences that demonstrate their competence in those skills. So you think about the portrait of a graduate and the ability to collaborate and use teamwork. That might be something that a teacher measures in observation or through other tools in using the peers to give feedback. So hopefully that gets kind of a general direction. Board Member Belknap is just really thinking about personalization as how do I, as the teacher and as the student, customize the learning experience to maximize my competency in what I'm expected to learn and acquire that knowledge and skills.
I understand the concepts. I'm just wondering how we're going to teach the concepts. So you and I can talk about it because it's going to be very difficult to have that incorporated. So we'll talk offline. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I see no further questions. Does that complete this report?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.